Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I'm Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, Biden has struck again. I'm sure you've heard, if you're in the gun world at all, that Biden has basically banned any importation of Russian ammunition and firearms. Okay, the firearms thing, that they were already doing that. That's nothing too new. But what is really new is the ammunition, because that has a direct impact on you and your Second Amendment rights here in the United States. You can have all the guns you want, but if you can't feed them, they're kind of pointless, aren't they? And that is the thing. You're going to get gun control one way, and if you can't do it, you're going to try the other way. That is a tried and true leftist tactic. However, this is not going to have the impact that they think, and the sky is not falling on this ammunition, particularly of Russian origin, and I'm going to explain why in 1 second, because I'm going to tie it to existing precedent in other industries that have done the same thing, and there has been no impact. Now, this is important. Don't get me wrong. This is a direct threat to the Second Amendment, but there is hope on the side of this because there is precedent, like I said, to basically get around this to where it's not going to be as bad as it could potentially be. It's still a threat, it's still annoying, it's still irritating, but let's dive in. Everything is linked in the description box below, and I want to hear what you guys think on this. So let me know, let me hear what you think. So, first one, fact sheet. United States imposes additional cost on Russia for the poisoning of Alexei Navalny. Yeah, that seems like a adequate reason to restrict importation of ammunition for Americans who don't know Alexei or even have ever heard that name before, right? Like I said, gun control one way or the other. I'm going to get it by hook or by crook. That is a leftist ideal through and through for the last 100 years. However, they can't really beat that little resistance of human spirit, and we're going to dive into that in 1 second. Interestingly enough, by looking at the honey industry. It's really interesting when all this ties together. You got to look at the whole picture, right? That's what we do on this channel. Here's the description of the sanctions. Pursuant to the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act of 1991, the United States will impose a second round of sanctions on the Russian Federation over its use of Novichok nerve agent in the August 2020 poisoning of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. Oh, Alexei, being used in such a nefarious way. New sanctions imposed today under this act include, and this is number one, this is the one, because I don't think we are going to be buying any missiles personally. Restrictions on the permanent imports of certain Russian firearms. New and pending permit applications for the permanent importation of firearms and ammunition manufactured or located in Russia will be subject to a policy of denial. Extremely important to hit this one little point here. Importation of firearms and ammunition manufactured or located in Russia will be subject to policy of denial. Now this is where it gets really interesting because it's all about that tiny little nuance of that word location, okay? Here's what it means for us in the long run, and this is why it's so important for elected officials, because this is not permanent. Really important to say, this is not permanent. This is the executive branch, okay? These latest sanctions on Russia pursuant to the act will take effect upon the publication of a Federal Register notice expected on September 7th, 2021, and they will remain in place for a minimum of 12 months. These sanctions can only be lifted after a 12-month period if the executive branch determines to do so. Okay, well, that's just any sanction. We did the same thing to China. All this is a sanction from the executive side of the government, which says we don't want to import this anymore. If in 3 years you have a different executive, all that goes away. They can reverse it. They can open that back up. So this is not permanent. And that's the important piece. What we've forced them into is an executive branch mode of operation. They don't have legislative, but they can't get it done. They don't have judicial. They're taking L's left and right. And now they have to go executive. You're talking about ATF and you're talking about State Department. Import, export. We talked about that back in February or May. That's what we were going to do if they got stuffed. They got stuffed legislatively. They're going executive branch. Look at Chipman. Look at ATF. Look at State Department. That's what's happening. Now, these measures are fairly moderate. They're not insane, but they're also not light. But there's ways around them because they're not permanent. They're not legislatively passed by Congress, the body that makes laws. Now, here is the existing example of something that has happened in the past relatively recently, same kind of concept. Remember how I mentioned we had tariffs on China? Look what the Chinese did, and they got around this, and there was no impact in the marketplace, okay? 1/3 of America's honey may be dangerous and illegal import from China. Without enough hives to support demand, the U.S. imports more than half of the 410 million pounds of honey it consumes each year. This is where it becomes important. China was the biggest supplier until the U.S. slapped a tariff on Chinese exports to counter state subsidies. But China came up with a clever way to skirt the duties. Quote, They'll ship their honey to another country, say Malaysia, Thailand, or India, said Troy Fore of the American Beekeeping Federation. Then it's apparently honey from that country, so they can ship it to the US and it escapes the duty. The practice is so widespread that 1/3 of our honey supply is probably smuggled in from China, according to an investigation in Food Safety News. So, very similarly, our State Department slapped a tariff on Chinese honey because it was dangerous to consumers. So the Chinese decided to just ship it to a neighboring country and then ship it to the United States. Instead of going A to B, they went A, B, C. Avoided all of it completely. What, in at least my interpretation of what's going to happen now, because this is economics based, this is business based, the supply and demand laws have not gone away. The demand still exists in the United States in a large way. Do you think that the people in Russia who are manufacturing this ammunition are going to go, oh man, that was a really great business venture. I guess it's gone now because they did slap the tariff or they did ban the import. No. What they're going to do is they're going to ship everything to Romania. They're going to ship everything to Ukraine. They're going to ship everything to different countries and then export it from there and go into the United States. You may not get the exact Tula brand, but you are going to get a brand that's incorporated in those countries, which is made from the same manufacturers, just shipped. It might be a little bit more expensive, but it won't be the point where you're never going to see this ammunition again, and it won't dry up the ammo supply because they're just going to motivate to a different country with more feasible laws for their activities that they're trying to do. We've seen it in honey, we've seen it in multiple different other industries, and while this is an attack on the Second Amendment, the capitalist nature of Americans are going to overcome it just like we do everything else. Look at all the other illicit materials that are completely illegal, but there's a thriving economy. There's always a will to get around something if it's an unjust situation that they're put in. And this right here is unjust. But my bet, bottom dollar, is they're going to do something very simple, skirt around it, and that ammunition, it may come in a different name, but it's still coming in. And that's what I want to bring to you guys tonight. It's important to look at the whole picture, not just the one action, because the outcome is what we're chasing, not the battle. Until tomorrow, I'm Braden. See you later.